Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and all the guests attending online, welcome to MPF Symposium 2021. I'm so thrilled to be your MC today. I'm Yo-Yila. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Wow, we're so happy to meet you in person. A year ago, the MPFA held a webinar to kick off a series of activities to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the MPF system, which marked the halfway point in our 40-year journey to build a mature retirement system. While the MPF system is approaching its 21st anniversary, we picked two important points concerning the MPF industry for today's symposium with the theme, The Road Ahead, Digital Transformation and Sustainable Investing. Today, we are very honored to have 6 distinguished speakers to share their insights with us. For today's program and speakers' biographies, you can just scan the QR code at the back of your badge. We will have a Q&A section during the symposium. If you are joining us online, please type your questions in the Q&A chat box on your screen. May I thus invite Mrs. Ayesha Macpherson, Chairman of Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Authority, to deliver the opening address. Mrs. Lau, please.
Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, Christopher Ho. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the MPF Symposium, which is the finale to our series of events marking the 20th anniversary of the introduction of the Mandatory Provident Fund. Next week, next Wednesday, 1st of December, will be another notable date for the MPF, as the MPF becomes 21 years old. The theme of today's symposium is The Road Ahead, Digital Transformation and Sustainable Investing. I believe all of you would agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the importance of technology and has accelerated digital transformation. Digital technologies make our everyday lives easier, and financial services are no exception. While the full impact of COVID-19 may not be clear yet, one thing is certain: there is a growing appetite for financial innovation, and our role is to make it happen. The construction of the eMPF platform will create a new MPF ecosystem based on the application of digital technology. It will provide a better customer service and ultimately improve operational efficiency and reduce MPF administrative costs. Our plan is to start an orderly transition by trustees in sequence starting in 2023, with the platform coming into full operation by 2025 at the earliest. Despite the growing adoption of Fintech, there are still challenges that hinder digitalization in the MPF landscape. These include overcoming customer skepticism, the difficulties of integrating new Fintech solutions into legacy systems, ensuring data protection and security, and identifying the right talent. To find solutions to these challenges, we will continue to solicit feedback and work with the industry and Fintech experts. My colleagues and I at the MPFA are confident that working together with our stakeholders, we will succeed in our digital transformation. Digitalization is not the only fundamental change facing the financial industry. The long-term transition towards sustainability in the investment community is at least as important. I strongly believe this will be the defining issue of the 21st century. The MPFA is playing a critical role in this regard. Today, we have just issued the principles for adopting sustainable investing in the investment and risk management processes of MPF funds. These principles are designed to give MPF trustees a high-level framework for integrating ESG into their investment decisions and risk management processes, as well as for making relevant disclosures to MPF scheme members. I'm convinced that sustainable investing will become the new normal in the financial industry. MPF trustees need to be acting right now to evaluate financial risks and opportunities so that their schemes are capable of providing sustainable returns for scheme members in their retirement. But simply incorporating ESG into the investment and risk management processes is not enough. We must also work with the industry to raise public awareness of sustainable investing. Ladies and gentlemen, the next few years will be very challenging for the industry as a whole, with some fundamental changes ahead of us. The MPFA will play a key role in making these necessary changes happen. And in working together on these goals, we will go a long way in building a retirement savings system that is valued by the people of Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lau. Please be seated. May I now invite our guest of honor, Mr. Christopher Ho, Secretary for Finance Services and Treasury, to say a few words. Mr. Ho, please.
Ayesha, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having me today to be the guest of honor for this year's MPF Symposium. As Ayesha mentioned just now, MPF is approaching its 21st birthday. So if you talk about like a work life of 40 years, it's like a halfway, like a people having a midlife crisis. So we need to think about what to do next. And I think today's theme is actually very timely about digital transformation and also sustainable investing. That's exactly the global trends in finance that everybody is pursuing. And looking back, the system has indeed demonstrated its resilience over the years as it weathered through a number of financial crises, yet is still able to maintain stable operation and achieve sizable returns for our retiring population. In fact, of the over 1.16 trillion Hong Kong dollars of assets currently managed under the MPF system, nearly 34%, i.e. around 400 billion Hong Kong dollars, are returns net of fees generated over the years for our retiring population. As for rate of return, the MPF system has delivered 4.6% annualized return on a net basis since its inception, and it surely has provided extra returns over and above inflation for our scheme members. Of course, that said, there's no room for complacency, and the public does have high expectations, as Ayesha just mentioned, on us to continuously improve the system, to make it less costly, and at the same time to deliver higher returns. The opportunity has come for us to utilize technology as a powerful tool to fundamentally transform the administration of MPF system such that we can meet the high expectation of the public. With the collective efforts from us at the government, MPFA, and the industry, we have commenced the journey of developing eMPF, an electronic platform that will centralize administration work across trustees with a view to bringing cost saving and enhanced efficiency to the system. This transformation will bring about both quantitative and qualitative benefits. For those who care about numbers, we have committed clearly to the public that once trustee migration is completed and we are fully operational, administration fee should immediately come down by around 30%. And in the 10 years to come after commencing operation, the eMPF is expected to deliver cost saving in the range of 30 to 40 billion Hong Kong dollars. This significant cost saving is only possible because we are all working together to build a new financial infrastructure that would harness the benefits of digitalization, centralization, standardization, and economies of scale. On the other hand, the use of technology will also bring us a more user-friendly experience in managing our MPF. This is very important, as many people tend to think that retirement is still a distant issue for them. Hence, they seldom manage their MPF accounts and decide on investment solutions that are suitable for their life stages. By making the MPF system more accessible through an electronic interface and platform, members of the public will be encouraged to start paying more attention to its management and select the providers and products that would best cater to their investment and retirement needs. Besides developing the eMPF platform, another key direction for us to improve the MPF system is to broaden the investment choices for our scheme members, including all of you. The opening up of our country's capital markets provide excellent opportunities for diversification and investment returns. As global institutional investors continue to increase exposure in the mainland market to ride on its liberalization, it is government's view that we should also facilitate MPF scheme members to benefit from this new market trend in an orderly and risk-managed manner. This is why in November last year, we have announced the inclusion of Shanghai and Shenzhen stock exchanges into the list of approved exchanges, with a view to facilitating MPF funds to invest in these two markets. Judging from the positive response of the market and the increased exposures into A-shares, I would say that we have made the right decision. As a next step, as announced by the Chief Executive in her policy address, we will facilitate investment into the mainland onshore bond market for government bonds and bonds issued by policy banks. This would further widen the investment choices available for MPF funds and, in the long term, allow the system to continuously deliver returns to our scheme members. Before I conclude, I note that besides digital transformation, the issue of sustainable investing is also a key theme for the symposium today. Indeed, the government views green and sustainable finance as one of the most important opportunities for our financial services industry, and MPF is no exception. By nature, MPF is for long-term investment, and it would be an ideal source of capital with patience that can enable green transformation. I very much look forward to exploring with MPFA and the industry on how we can further promote sustainable investing for the MPF system in the future. Thank you, and I wish the symposium every success today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hui. Please remain on stage and proceed to the center of the stage for the group photo. May we also invite Mrs. Ayesha Macpherson Lau, Chairman of the MPFA, and also Mr. Yan-chee, Acting Managing Director of the MPFA, to come on stage for a photo. So let's have a look to the center. We have photographers in the middle. Continue to have a look to the center. And also, we have some camera at the back of the ballroom. May I invite the photographers, maybe you can please sit down and then let our media friends at the back to capture the moment. May I invite you, could you please sit down for the one holding the camera? Yes, please let our media friends to take. Thank you so much, and please remain on stage. And also, I would like to invite today's speakers to come on stage for a group photo with our officiating guest, Mr. Victor Lam, Government Chief Information Officer, Office of the Government Chief Information Officer, Mr. Howard Lee, Deputy Chief Executive, Hong Kong Monetary Authority, Mr. James Robertson, Head of Asia, ex-China and Japan PRI Association, Ms. Linda Yu, Director of Intermediaries Supervision Department, Securities and Futures Commission, Mr. Liu Zhu, Chief Operating Officer and Executive Director, MPFA, Ms. Cynthia Ho, Executive Director, MPFA. Once again, thank you so much for your support. Thank you very much. So please continue to have a look to the center to have the best photo. Please continue to have a look to the center. And also, one more to go. And also, we have some media friends at the back of the ballroom. We can have a look at the back side. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And please be seated. Thank you so much. Today, we're so honored to have distinguished speakers with different expertise, and then I believe that we, all of you, and including me, will gain so much insight today. And then to kick off the first part of the symposium, which will focus on digital transformation, we are very honored to have Mr. Victor Lam, Government Chief Information Officer, Office of the Government Chief Information Officer, to discuss Hong Kong Smart City Blueprint 2.0 and the initiatives under the smart economy. Mr. Lam, please.
Secretary Hui, Chair Lady Mrs. Lau, Vice, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm really delighted to join you all today at the Symposium of Hong Kong MPFA and to share with you our Hong Kong Smart City Blueprint 2.0. Next slide. Okay. So as Secretary Hui said, innovation and technology, I&T, is one of our engines that boosts our economic development and growth. With the support of the government and the industry, Hong Kong's I&T outlook is promising, and the central government has further given its solid support for Hong Kong's development into an international innovation and technology hub in her 14th five-year plan. Our chief executive has recently announced a series of forward-looking measures in her 2021 policy address. To name but a few, constructing the Sentine Telopole, releasing land for I&T development, expanding our two I&T flagships, Science Park and the Cyberport. All these initiatives are solid proof that Hong Kong has entered into a golden era for I&T development. And as a matter of fact, our hard work has not gone unnoticed. We have seen great improvements in our I&T global rankings. The latest good news is that Hong Kong ranked the first in Asia and the second in the world in the IMD World Digital Competitive Ranking 2021. And these international recognitions demonstrate that Hong Kong has an edge in I&T and our advancements in the digital world. The government's commitment to develop Hong Kong into a smart city was reaffirmed back in 2017 policy address. And the first Hong Kong Smart City Blueprint was published in December 2017, setting out 17 initiatives under 6 smart areas: smart mobility, smart living, smart environment, smart people, smart economy, and smart government. In the past 4 years, more than 40 initiatives under the blueprint have been completed or under completion in stages, and I will elaborate a little bit more in the next slide. For example, a new version of Hong Kong e-mobility mobile app released by the Transport Department was released in March 2021, this year, to provide personalized traffic and public transport information anytime and anywhere for route planning, including walkability in Hong Kong. As at the end of this year, the app has an accumulated download of over 2.6 million. And the number of free Wi-Fi hotspots under the Wi-Fi.HK brand has now increased to over 43,000. And the Hong Kong MA launched the faster payment system in September 2018. And as at October, the FPS has recorded a total of 9.2 million registrations, and processed over 390 million transactions, involving an aggregated amount of more than 4.3 trillion Hong Kong dollars and RMB 75 billion. The government has also released over 4,800 datasets in machine-readable format and provided over 1,400 application programming interfaces via our open data portal for free use by the public and the industry. And the number of downloads from our portal is huge. It's 10 billion times last year, or about 30 million daily downloads. And to facilitate and promote wider adoption of INT within the government, we launched the Pro-Innovation Government Procurement Policy and also established a Smart Government Innovation Lab back in 2019. And as at October, we have organized about 100 workshops and identified 36 solutions that were suitable for conducting POCs by the departments. We have also invested over 900 million in the past 3 years to take forward a number of digital infrastructure initiatives, including the next generation GovCloud, and also a big data analytics platform, and more importantly, a one-stop personalized digital services platform known as IMSmart, launched last December. Within 1 year, the IMSmart registration has exceeded 1 million. And the government released the Blueprint 2.0 last December, setting out over 130 smart city initiatives, with 60 of them being new ones. It also has a new chapter on the use of INT in combating COVID-19 and puts forth the idea of smart village pilots. Now, I will briefly talk about some new initiatives under Blueprint 2.0. On smart mobility, the government is developing a traffic data analytics platform, which will make use of big data analytics to analyze the real-time traffic and transport data, and also devise strategies to enhance traffic efficiency. And the new system will be launched next year. We have also set aside 1 billion Smart Traffic Fund to provide funding support for enterprises and organizations to conduct research and application on vehicle-related innovation and technology. And smart living, the Transport Department has enhanced 15 types of its existing online licensing services. For example, renewal of traffic driving license using IMSmart to simplify and also expedite the identification authentication procedures. And the Hospital Authority continues to pilot use HA Go, the mobile app, to provide telehealth services such as consultation via video conference for its patients. And on smart environment, the Chief Executive announced in the policy address this year that Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2050 will set out more proactive strategies and measures to achieve carbon neutrality before 2050. The government is also implementing a smart toilet program to collect usage data and environmental parameters and to make use of Internet of Things, IoT, and big data in enhancing public toilet service in public toilets. We are also deploying technologies including the use of thermal imaging cameras and artificial intelligence to improve pest control and to record rodent activities and their extent. And on smart people, we will continue to dedicate our efforts to cultivate an interest of IT among our younger generation. For example, the IT Innovation Lab in Schools initiative launched in December last year is to provide funding support of up to 1 million over 3 school years for each publicly funded secondary schools to organize IT-related extracurricular activities. And the school's response is overwhelming. Over 270 applications already received as at the end of last month. We have also allocated another 200 million to extend the program to all primary schools through the Knowing More About IT program. And as at end of October, already 50 schools have submitted their applications for funding. And last summer, we have also launched a STEM internship program for the universities, students, and provide assistance to them to the undergraduates and also postgraduates of our universities to enroll in short-term IT-related internships. And over 2,500 students and over 1,300 companies and organizations have already joined the scheme this summer. On smart government, the Buildings Department is developing the Electronic Submission Hub as a digital centralized platform for receiving and processing building plans and applications submitted under the Building Ordinance. We have also taken forward digital government by providing more electronic services for submitting applications, making payments, obtaining licenses, and using government services. Moreover, we will continue to reform about 900 government services under the Streamlining Government Services Program to further enhance our public services. And finally, on smart economy, the government attaches great importance to law tech and supports the development of an online platform to facilitate the provision of efficient, cost-effective, and secure online dispute resolution and deal-making services in Hong Kong. And last but not least, the MPFA is also working full steam on the eMPF platform, and our colleagues of MPFA will certainly share more details with us later. And Blueprint 2.0 has also a new chapter on the use of IT in combating COVID-19, which includes anti-epidemic initiatives such as Stay Home Safe and the Leave Home Safe that you are now using. We also include a Smart Village pilot initiative to explore the use of INT to address the daily life issues faced out by our residents living in rural or more remote areas, such as enhancing the telecommunications, providing free Wi-Fi services in village premises, as well as medical consultations for old people, traffic management, etc., etc. In the interest of time, I will conclude my presentation here. I look forward to a panel discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Lam. Please be seated. Thank you very much for insightful sharing, which gave us better understanding on how we can benefit from the various Smart City Blueprints 2.0 initiatives. Fintech and digital infrastructure are the major focuses under Blueprints 2.0. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority is playing a pivotal role in supporting the developments. Today, we are privileged to have Mr. Howard Lee, Deputy Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, share its progress on fintech and digital infrastructure. Mr. Lee, please.
Okay, Secretary Hui, Mrs. Lau, and Mr. Cheng, thank you very much for having me here to share with you some of the fintech initiatives by the HKMA and the digitalization journey that we are going through. But before I go into this presentation, if I may pick up one point made by Secretary Hui, i.e. in mid-career, 20 years after you have been working, what should you think about? I think one good thing to think about is think about planning for your retirement. One way is to, of course, up the voluntary contribution to the MPF. And then 20 years later, perhaps you need to think about, after the accumulation of wealth, decumulation, then you should think about the three products by the Hong Kong Mortgage Authority: the annuity, the reverse mortgage, and reverse policy, insurance policy. So thank you for the airtime for advertisement. Let me go back to the topic that we are supposed to talk about. In June this year, our Chief Executive, Eddie, announced the Fintech 2025 initiative. You might have read about the individual actions or individual activities that we talk about. Today, I would like to very briefly cover the broad scope and talk a little bit about the thinking behind of these initiatives rather than going through them one by one. Now, first of all, the initiative we come through divided into 3 pillars and then 5 main categories, mainly to help promote the demand in the system, because without the demand, no matter how much money you put into it, how many people you train, you do not have the opportunity, the business opportunity to create a sustainable fintech environment. So demand is very important. And then for the ecosystem, you need some other element like talent, like infrastructure. And then data. In the modern world, data is really the new oil. And in a city like Hong Kong, in a small city like Hong Kong, we might not be like the mainland or some other places where they have a very centralized platform. Access to data might be a little bit fragmented and more difficult. So this is something that we need to work on as well. So this is the philosophy behind. With that, we have a number of initiatives covered in 5 main areas. First is all bank go fintech, because this is building on the first phase and earlier phase of the fintech development. On this, we want to promote a lot of banks in the adoption of fintechs. We actually have a number of specific initiatives like the baseline assessment and then the guidance for banks, such that banks would find it easier and also more compelling to move up the technology value chain. And we have some other things that would help banks to do this that we have already done before is the gray circle below, like the FPS that Victor mentioned. These provide the kind of infrastructure, the platform for us to ride on in order to make better use of technology. So with this kind of all bank go fintech and moving up the tech train, we believe the demand for technology would be higher. This would create a virtuous cycle in the sense that startup tech company will find more opportunity in Hong Kong, and then they would be keen to come up with new ideas and new technology to help banks going through this journey. Another category is future-proofing for CBDC, central bank digital currency. This is important in the sense that this is even a more visionary and forward-looking initiative because today we do not have a wide adoption of CBDC as yet. But I would say Hong Kong, we are pretty much in the forefront, especially in the exploration of technology for wholesale CBDC. We are working with the BIS, Bank for International Settlement, on the mBridge project, and a number of other central banks are joining that. That would provide a totally new solution for cross-border payment, and we are actually ranked by one of the consultants as the most ready in the world in terms of wholesale CBDC. This would also precipitate a lot of ideas and also people around to look at this kind of a future-looking opportunity. Of course, we were also working with this PBOC in the test of ECNY in the cross-border usage at the retail level. This is something that would be very exciting because the PBOC is the most ready major central bank in the world in terms of rolling out retail CBDC. The third main element is something that I alluded to a little bit earlier, which is to create the next generation data infrastructure. The main area, the main part is really the commercial data interchange. I will give a little bit more elaboration below. And we are also working very closely with Victor on a number of initiatives, including the corporate ID, which is actually building on the success of the I'm Smart, which is a personal EID. So we want to do the personal, the corporate level as well. That will provide much more convenient access to tech services by companies, not just individuals. 4 is talent training. You are very familiar with that. The government has been doing a lot, and so we are doing quite a number of things together with the universities and also the banks in order to provide opportunities for youngsters at different stages, no matter whether it's intern, sandwich years for undergraduate, and also placement for newly graduated. And we are also working with a lot of tech companies and banks to provide more fintech labs in Hong Kong, such as the ecosystem here, again, would be more vibrant. Finally, is the ecosystem of funding and policies. Because with all these, without the proper funding and regulatory headroom, it would be difficult for tech to flourish. So we have a number of things like the Fintech Supervisory Sandbox. As compared to the past, the tech company can not only come to us and then test idea, but we have worked with the government to provide some kind of one-stop shop to get funding from the Innovation and Technology Fund to support these initiatives. Growth portfolio is an important thing because the HKMA, we cannot, because of the mandate of EF, Exchange Fund, cannot allocate funding to local projects. But the Financial Secretary has decided to set up a growth portfolio which will provide much needed funding through different channels. And actually, Secretary Hui is the chairman of the investment committee for this portfolio, which will provide a new source of funding for worthy projects in Hong Kong. So a very quick overview of the several projects that we are doing. So as I mentioned earlier, I would like to elaborate a little bit further on one or two things. One is the CDI, the Commercial Data Interchange. Like I said before, in Hong Kong, we have a lot of data, but the data are usually residing in different platforms, in different companies, and it's very difficult for any single data user to tap into all of them simultaneously and get the data. The cost would be high, the time would be long. What we hope to do is for the HKMA to create an infrastructure, what we call the Commercial Data Interchange, to connect up different data providers. So that for the data provider, it's quite easy in the sense that they hook up to one platform through one connection, and then they can share the data to multiple users as well. So no matter whether it's for the user or data provider, it would be a lot easier. And they don't need to go through bilateral connection, which is like a pretty messy spaghetti arrangement. And the benefit of this is that standardization. We hope to provide some data protocol, data dictionary, such that everyone would conform to the data, and then one connection would be enough for sharing and then for tapping the data. The platform would not store data, so you don't need to worry about sort of a data leakage here. This is a data exchange, data interchange. That's why we are naming this. And because it's directly linked to the data sources, data will be reliable. And we will have a very robust consent management system so that data would be provided, especially individual data, personalized data, in case there's any, would be provided on a consent basis. So there's no question of your data in your phone company or power company going to somebody unknown without your consent. But we might be able to provide some area where some global data, aggregate data, might be able to provide it to users for like a model training. This is something that we will try to do. And security and trust, hopefully the HKMA would be able to provide some kind of comfort to users and data provider alike. Finally, when I was asked to talk about digitalization, I thought I should also cover a little bit of the digitalization being undertaken by the HKMA. We might not be at the forefront of digitalization. Some financial institutions are actually moving pretty advanced level. But for us, we have multiple functions, and we are going through a digitalization journey, multi-year journey. I just share a few takeaways. This is a very difficult project, and because you need to go through many functions. The most difficult part is really in the middle, reskilling. Reskilling is because we are pretty used to one particular way of doing things. Digitalization is not about adopting technology, but more about adopting technology and changing the way you deal with business. And then you probably need to redesign everything that you are doing to adopt the best practice of technology. And this reskilling does not start with the project. It starts much earlier than the project, that you need to do a lot of education, training, and knowledge transfer, sharing, so that colleagues would embrace this new idea at the outset. Second is platform. In the past, we have a very vertical silo system. But going through digitalization, data is everything. You need to have platform of data, platform of infrastructure, data of data catalog, so that throughout the organization, you will be able to share the data and use the data intelligently. Collaboration, obviously, with this kind of horizontal structure, you need a lot more collaboration among your colleagues and different departments. So in terms of governance structure and knowing the importance of the important issues that I talk about, we have a very structured governance structure, and then management buy-in is extremely important because in the HKMA, the chief executive is fully in the picture as to what's happening, and I chair a project steering committee and meet regularly and then resolve issue extremely quickly because otherwise you will get stuck into sort of an interdepartmental issue and then dispute, and then you will not be able to proceed on time. And I'm not going to go through the individual structure, but if you are interested, I'm happy to share my experience with you offline. Perhaps I would just stay here, and thank you very much again for this opportunity to share some thoughts with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee. Please be seated. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us the HKMA's Fintech 2025 vision and strategies. To enhance digital transformation, the MPFA is working at full steam to develop the eMPF platform, who will bring revolutionary changes to the MPF ecosystem. May I now invite Ms. Cynthia Ho, Executive Director of the MPFA, to share more on the latest developments of the eMPF platform. Ms. Ho, please.
Good afternoon, Secretary Mr. Hui, Chair Lady Mrs. Lau. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here to present to you the next topic, which is digital transformation. And specifically, I would like to talk about the eMPF platform. The name of the eMPF platform has been mentioned a couple of times during this symposium already, and I hope to be able to give you a bit more details about it. First of all, before we look ahead, I would like to take you through a journey back in time and look at the past 20 years. Secretary Hui made the comment about the midlife crisis. I have to pick up on that one as well. We are actually looking at it a little bit more positively. We are going through a midlife challenge rather than a crisis. In the last 20 years, we have actually done a lot of things in terms of standardization, reducing fees, and digitalization. So I've tried to go through what we've done in the last 20 years. And in terms of standardization, it was as early as the year 2004 that we introduced the disclosure code, which actually standardized a measurement for fees. That was the first time when there was a measurement for fees that was introduced in 2004. And also in 2017, we introduced the DIS, the Default Investment Strategy. And again, this is the first time we actually standardized default investment. So all schemes in the MPF system has the same investment strategy. So that was another standardization that we've done in the past. And in terms of reducing fees, it must be the employee choice arrangement, which was introduced in 2012, which actually encouraged competition and hence create room for reducing fees. Okay, let's look at digitalization because that's the theme of today. So out of these milestones, let's call it milestones, which are the ones that are digitalization related? The green ones. We're going green. So it was as early as in the year 2007 that we first introduced an online comparative platform for comparing fees, helping scheme members choose between funds by comparing fees. And 2 years ago, in 2019, we actually upgraded the fee comparison platform to a fund comparative platform,
which means scheme members, apart from comparing fees, they can compare all the different features of different funds in the MPF system. And then in the year 2012, when we introduced the employee choice arrangement, we also introduced the Trustees Services Comparative Platform, helping members compare services of the trustees. And these are all online platforms. So we have already gone quite digital in terms of helping scheme members make comparison between the products offered in the MPF system. We've also introduced the EPA inquiry system in 2017, which helped members electronically make inquiries about their personal accounts in the MPF system. And it was earlier this year that we have introduced a chatbot on our website. So we've done quite a bit, but we don't think that is enough. 20 years has gone past, and we think it is the time for a better MPF system. So we have a vision. We have a vision for enhancing the MPF scheme administration. And the vision has 3 aspects to it. The first aspect is user experience. We want better user experience. The scheme members want better user experience. To be able to achieve that, we need to standardize, we need to streamline, and automate scheme administration processes. And in doing so, we can actually improve the efficiency. Improving efficiency meaning that we will create room for cost reduction and fee reduction. And that would also help us with our second aspect of our vision, which is to lower MPF fees. And if we can make the savings in cost translate into reduction in fees, then we will be able to benefit the scheme members as well. And the third aspect of our vision is future reforms. We understand that there are a number of things that the society wants us to do, the society wants the government to do. For example, we've already got 2 initiatives on the pipeline. The employer-designated savings account, which would help in gradually removing offsetting. And the other one is government's contribution to low-income earners. And these are all in the pipeline, waiting for the eMPF platform to be introduced. So what actually is the eMPF platform? It is the most significant reform in the history of the MPF system. First of all, it is a public utility. So it's not going to be owned by commercial organizations. It will be operated on a non-profit basis, which means it will be more savings for the scheme members. And secondly, at the moment in the industry, there are 13 trustees and 12 scheme administration platforms. The eMPF platform will be a single common electronic platform that will be used by all scheme members and employers. And also, because it is an electronic platform, we'll be able to turn paper into digital. So let's take a quick look at the current state of the scheme administration of the MPF system. Let's use the employer as an example, because there are 300,000 employers in the MPF system, and each of them have to make contributions every month. So there are approximately 30 million transactions every month. And if you look at the rate of them using the electronic means currently provided by the trustees, it's not that high. Only about 45%, which means not even half the employers, are making use of the electronic means already provided by the trustees. One reason might be because there are 12 systems. They're not standardized. So all the trustees, all the employers may get a little bit confused if they're contributing to more than one scheme. So that may be one of the reasons. But anyway, some of them are because of behavior. They're so used to paper means that it's difficult, they find it difficult to change to digital means. So if you think the 45% is not high, then I can tell you that 2 years ago, the figure was even lower. It was something like 25 to 30%. Our chairlady mentioned COVID-19, which we are still in the midst of. That actually, every cloud has a silver lining, and that actually helped with boosting the digitalization rate. In the last 18 months or so, the digitalization user rate has gone from about 25% to 45%. And also, using paper is not very conducive to ESG, which is another subject of today's symposium. Because using paper means that we are not very friendly to the environment. So eMPF is actually very conducive to the ESG. Okay, let's take a very quick look at the key features of the new eMPF system that we'll be introducing. At first, take a look at the scheme members. There are 4.5 million scheme members at the moment, but there are 10 million accounts, meaning every scheme member has two to three accounts on average. And at the moment, if they want to take a totality look of their MPF savings, they need to go to two or three different trustees. Whereas with the introduction of the common platform, they'll be able to go to one place and be able to manage all their accounts in one go. And also because it's a digitalized platform, they can actually operate it anytime, anywhere. And more importantly, that will create room for fee reduction. And if I look at the employer groups, I talked about them having to make contributions every month. And with the common platform, they will be going to one-stop shop. There are some very good employers at the moment. We had our GMEA a little while ago, congratulating the good employers. Some of them actually provide more than one scheme for the employees to choose from. And these employers, they now need to go to different trustees to make contributions. Whereas with the common platform, they only need to go to one place. Also, the number of paperwork and human error will be reduced. There will also be reminders for the employers when the contribution day is coming due. As for the trustees, because there'll be standardization, streamlining, and automation of the scheme administration processes, they will be able to reduce administration burden because those work would not be done by them, and also the associated compliance costs and burden on the trustees as well. Now, we talk a lot about the good things of the eMPF's platform. So what are the key success factors such that we can all get to the win-win-win situation? Well, first of all, commitment. I think that's very important. And the government has already committed significant funding for the project for us to be able to build and develop the infrastructure. And secondly, collaboration of the industry is equally important. Let me go back to commitment for a moment. I want to talk about the MPFA as well. The MPFA is also very committed to this task, and we are determined. We're putting in all our efforts, working together with the trustees, collaborating with them. And thirdly, is the behavioral change of employers and scheme members. I see these three as being the key success factors to be able to launch the eMPF system, eMPF platform. Talking about the trustees, I want to take the opportunity to thank my industry friends. We've been working together very closely. We have formed forums, work groups on resolving technical issues, connectivity issues. We have work groups on customer journey, and we will also have one on operating rules very soon. So I thank them for their support. As for scheme members and employers, we need them to go through the digital transformation journey, changing behavior, changing from using paper means to digital means. And we all know that employers and scheme members, they come from all walks of life. And it is not going to be an easy task. And we know that we have to put in a lot of effort into this particular challenge. So we have already got some plans in mind. The first is the design of the eMPF platform is very important. So we have planned to actually solicit views from the users at an early stage. And we're not wasting time. We'll actually start this before the end of this year. We'll be going out to engage users and collect their views on a prototype that we have already developed. And secondly, way before the introduction of the platform, we will be holding some community-wide publicity and education campaign so that people know that it is coming, and we'll start to encourage people to go digital and teach them how to actually use the platform. And also, the trustee support is still going to be very important because trustees now are the contact points with the scheme members and the employers. So we will also be relying on them to reach out to the employers and scheme members. As to the timeline, it was already mentioned. We hope that the eMPF platform will be fully operational in 2025. At the moment, we are in the construction stage, and we're pressing ahead at full steam. And then at the next stage is a 2-year period of migration. Again, we need the collaboration of the industry to be able to migrate all the data onto the platform. Now, we started with taking a look at the past, and I want to look at the road ahead. The launch of the eMPF platform is going to be a cornerstone for the next 20 years. A retirement system takes 40 years to mature. We're in the midpoint, and I think the eMPF platform will actually bring a lot of opportunities going forward. There'll be a number of reform initiatives that we might not be able to do without the eMPF platform that will come in the future. And last but not least, I want to thank other organizations like Victor's organization and Howard's organization, because we are actually collaborating. For example, on the eMPF platform, we will be using the FPS system as one of the means of payment for employers and employees, and also I Am Smart as one of the means of authenticating identity. So I think if we join hands together and if we put our efforts together, we will be able to build Hong Kong as a smart city in no time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ho. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Well, we are all looking forward to the launch of the eMPF platform, which will be a smart administrative solution to move MPF to the next generation. And I think it will even encourage more people to take an active approach to manage MPF accounts, which will be one of the keys to leading an ideal retirement life. And it requires the collaborative efforts of various sectors to complete the digital transformation journey, and that we understand more about the roadmap of the government, HKMA, and also MPFA. We are going to have a panel discussion from different expertise to discuss more about the collaboration. And then may I now invite Mr. Victor Lam, Mr. Howard Lee, and Ms. Cynthia Ho to come to the stage again for a panel discussion. And also, we are pleased to have Mr. Jonathan Ho, Director of the External Affairs Division of the MPFA, as the moderator.
Secretary Hui, Chair Lady, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very delighted to be the moderator of this session. But before we begin the discussion, may I invite you to give another round of applause to the distinguished speakers for their wonderful sharing and discussion. Thank you very much. I would like to have the first question for Victor. Okay. I'm very pleased to learn that with the expanded scope of the Smart City Blueprint, there are over 130 initiatives, which is 70% increase than the original version, version 1.0 issued in 2017. And we're also pleased to learn that the high ranking of Hong Kong right now worldwide. Would you please share your view with us about Hong Kong's readiness into a full transition into the digital era? And has Audio identified any missing link in our journey to full digitalization?
Okay, thank you for your question. I think Hong Kong's people and Hong Kong are pretty much ready to embrace the digital era. And like it or not, I think that COVID-19 pandemic has also dramatically shifted almost every aspect of people's daily living, and from non-digital daily lives to digital routines. And under our new normal, many of us have experienced working, collaborating with our partners, with our friends, virtual meeting, collaboration tools, etc., etc. And our younger generation continues their learning via online education platforms. We shop and pay, as well as settle our bank transactions over the internet. So coupled with the excellent telecom infrastructure in Hong Kong, I think we are pretty much ready for the digital era. As I said, our readiness index has risen from, I think, 5th last year to 2nd globally this year, and also 1st in Asia. And indeed, for the technology parameter under the index, we ranked 1st in the world. So that's our strength. Yet, I think we are also mindful that some of the needy groups, especially the old people, the people with a disability, will require more assistance for them to integrate into a digital life. Therefore, we also have some digital inclusion programs. For example, to help our needy groups to leverage technological advancements to improve their quality of living and connect with the society. I cite a couple of examples here. For example, we have the Web Accessibility Campaign to facilitate the persons with visually impaired to access online information and services. And we also have the ICT outreach program and training program for the old people so that they can enhance their capability and interest in using digital technology. And according to a latest survey, the percentage of people aged 65 and above having used the internet in the past 12 months have just exceeded 2/3 of our population. So it's not bad, but we still have some work to do to further enhance our digital literacy among those people. Thank you.
That's very impressive indeed. The adoption of Fintech in the financial sector is also a very important component in the Smart City Blueprint. Howard, may I ask you, in your presentation, you highlighted HKMA's commitment to lead the financial sector in adopting Fintech by the year 2025, right? How close are we now to meet these targets? And how do we compare ourselves with the counterparts in the region as well as in the mainland in terms of industry-wide adoption of Fintech? Howard?
Thank you, Johnson. How close we are, of course, it also depends on what initiative we are talking about, because some initiatives would take longer to achieve. Like CBDC, we are going through the pilot stage, and then we will roll out value transaction sometime next year. The CDI, we are rolling out the soft launch is these 2 days, and then the next year we will go into production. But what I would like to emphasize is, in terms of innovation, there's no finishing line. Is really we need to continue to innovate, continue to make changes, and to adapt our strategy, because innovation never stops. The important thing is to create the kind of ecosystem like what I talk about, and then the culture within the organization, within society, to embrace changes and then to look for new ways of doing things, and then somehow also take risks, because innovation means doing something that might not have been done before. And don't expect to be successful on the first try. But the important thing is to contain the risks and then to proceed as you will, and then if you run into problem, measure up the problem. If you need to cut loss quickly. Is this culture that's more important than individual initiative? For us, we believe the most important thing we do is first to promote the culture in the banking industry and also provide a collaborative spirit with the tech sector, and then provide the kind of infrastructure, like the data infrastructure, like the payment infrastructure, that everyone can leverage on, and then do their own innovation. It's not just an innovation that we impose on them, but we provide the fertile ground for everyone to innovate in much easier way and then in a more expedient way. So a very long answer to your short question.
But still, I would like to follow up. Do you foresee any barriers in this journey, as well as how well prepared is the industry right now? Do they enjoy the confidence of consumers? How can we overcome these barriers?
I would say the readiness among different participants vary. If you talk about banks, some banks are more ready, some banks are less ready. We have come across banks which are actually pretty much ahead of us when we launched our project, like the API, open API. Some banks that we have been doing this. But some banks have been grappling with this. I would say the main, how would I say, the main factor and main ingredient, and in a way the main impediment is really talent, is people. Because you cannot, even if someone say we have a technology tailor-made for you, you really need to have the management, the in-house expertise to know what's the need of your organization, and then work with the vendor to make sure that the solution fits your culture, fits your organization. So creating more talent, working with the university is something that we and the government are actually working very closely. You talk about confidence of consumer. Now, one important lesson that we have learned through the years is consumers do not go for tech for the sake of going for tech. They are a very small segment that very tech savvy. Anything tech, they will go for it. But we must ask ourselves, what's the value proposition and what's the new value that we bring to the table? Just like what Cynthia talked about, I think she was really at the point, what does the eMPF bring to the table? And then you explain the value proposition. I think that's the most important.
Okay, Victor, what's your view on barriers? Especially since Ojo has been pushing this smart city concept for a few years now. So how do we overcome these, move these barriers?
In fact, I agree with Howard. I will cite another example, the cash payout scheme, or the voucher scheme, the cash voucher scheme. Do you know what is the percentage of people registering online for the voucher scheme? Anybody know? It's over 90%. So over 90% of people, Hong Kong people, registered their cash, the voucher online. So that's already, talks about it. Most of our people, if they consider that useful to them, then they will use online channels. So I think the barrier is indeed, of course, promotion is one of them. The other one is how to promote technology to underprivileged groups. The needy, the old people, the people with disabilities. As I said, we have some programs to enable some underprivileged groups to also enjoy the benefit of technology in the modern world.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Thank you, Howard. May I now switch to Cynthia? Because just in the presentation, we all know that eMPF platform is also featured in the Smart City blueprint. Can you share with us, last month, the Legislative Council has just passed an amendment bill relating to the MPF. Can you tell us the significance of this amendment to the ongoing work of MPFA and the eMPF platform company in the development of the platform?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Jonathan. The legislative amendment passed last month is actually the second stage legislative amendment. To enable the eMPF project, we have two stages of legislative amendment. The first stage was actually passed last year. And the first stage was a simpler one, which is just to enable the MPFA to set up a wholly owned subsidiary. And then this second stage amendment that was passed last month was a lot more comprehensive. It basically has 4 aspects to it. The first aspect is to provide the basis for designating the eMPF platform being the common platform to be used by all MPF schemes. So that's the first aspect. And the second aspect, because of the change in the ecosystem of the MPF system, it's because of the change that the eMPF platform will bring to the MPF ecosystem, we need to redesignate the roles and responsibility of different parties. And also, because of the first stage legislative amendment, we have introduced a new party to this whole system, which is the eMPF platform company, which was set up in March this year to build, develop, and in the future, operate the eMPF platform. So we need to redesignate or redelineate the roles and responsibility of the government, which has a governing role, the MPFA, which is a wholly owned, which is now a parent, 100% parent company of the subsidiary. We have an oversight role, and the company itself will have to operate in the future, going forward in the long term. So that's the second aspect. And the third aspect is that it's about fees, which I talked about in my presentation earlier. We expect the fees to be able to come down. So in the legislation, we require the trustees not to charge scheme members more than what the MPF platform is charging them, so that the savings can actually benefit the scheme members. So that's the third aspect. And the fourth aspect of it is some technical amendments, which will standardize and streamline some of the scheme administration work that needs to be done now. Although it's a technical amendment, but it is important because it removes those responsibilities from the trustees to reduce their compliance burden and the costs associated with it. So the amendment that was passed last month was a very significant one, which affects a number of major aspects of the eMPF platform development.
Okay, may I follow up? From the perspective of MPFA and the platform company, what are the most challenging issues for us to overcome in the development of the platform?
Okay, we talked about legislation just now, which is a fairly boring subject, actually. And the most challenging issue going ahead is actually digital transformation. And I echo what Howard said earlier, is the reskilling, the changing of mindsets, the behavioral change that is required from the scheme members and the employers. And that takes time. We think about someone needing to change their behavior. It's not going to be easier. You're used to doing certain things certain way, and now you have to change, do it in a different way. That takes time. I think that part is the most challenging one. And in particular, I want to use the employers as an example again, because in Hong Kong, over 95% of the employers are SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. And they may not have the amount of resources or expertise like the larger corporations, and it will be difficult for them to adjust initially. So we need to give them a lot of help, and we need to prepare them early. And that's why we have all the engagement plans that we will actually go out to them very soon. And talking about the scheme members as well, like what Victor said, for the more grassroots scheme members, they may not have access to equipment even. So we need to think about a method to actually reach out to them, help them, and equip them so that they can actually enjoy the benefits and use the MPF system, the eMPF platform.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think we have time for some questions from the floor. Yoi, can I pass to you?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I've received some questions online, and then this is the one on cybersecurity for Howard. Howard, many people have expressed concerns about system security and data privacy. Do you have any advice on how to increase users' confidence in the transformation to complete digitalization?
That's a very good question, and that's also a very important question. Confidence in cybersecurity, just like confidence in a lot of things, need to build up over time. You can explain all the technical niceties that you have put into the system to ensure security, but if people see incidents, people always hear news about data leakages, they naturally would be concerned. So for anyone owning a system, it's absolutely essential that you do not compromise in your data security and cybersecurity efforts, because it might take you many months so that for users to observe that you are really secure, you don't run into incidents. But once there's an incident, it takes many more months for you to rebuild the same confidence. So the technical thing apart is really the experience. One more thing which is important is for an internal organization, very important is we need to assure everyone or make sure that everyone understands cybersecurity is not just the responsibility of the IT people. Every user of the system, internal system, you have a responsibility of holding up cybersecurity, like don't click on unknown emails, don't sort of plug an UBS into your system. So these are the things that are also very important.
So as we're running out of time, we have to end this section. Once again, I invite you all, please give some big hands to our guest speakers and moderator. Thank you very much, and please be seated. Wow, this is a really interesting and interactive discussion. Now we have a short break, and then we will start the second session on sustainable investing in 10 minutes. See you again in 10 minutes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Our next session is going to start now. May I invite you all, please be seated. Before we start the next section, we would like to present a video produced by the Hong Kong Trustees Association to showcase the role of MPF trustees and service providers in the past 20 years. Please enjoy.
Over the last 2 decades, the MPF system has become an important pillar of retirement protection for Hong Kong's working population, amounting to more than 1.2 trillion Hong Kong dollars in total assets to date. Thanks to the joint effort of our MPF service providers, this valuable source of retirement savings has been diligently safeguarded, and the system has performed well by international standards in adequacy, coverage, security, sustainability and efficiency. MPF trustees, sponsors, custodians, administrators, investment managers, along with the Hong Kong SAR government and the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Authority, all work hand in hand to act in the best interests of members. Today, 13 trustees manage 27 MPF schemes encompassing over 400 funds and over 10 million member accounts handled by 12 administrators, serving 4.5 million members. At the end of 2020, around 100,000 accounts had more than $1 million in MPF benefits, compared to around 30,000 by 2016. To help members get the most out of MPF, we devoted significant resources to delivering more efficient services, competitive fee structures, investment returns of 4% beating inflation, as well as innovative solutions. For example, employee choice arrangement gives employees autonomy to transfer their mandatory contributions. Default investment strategy provides 2 ready-made funds with fee caps and automatic de-risking, and tax-deductible voluntary contributions offer tax incentives to members. We are also digitalizing the MPF journey for employers and members so they can conveniently and efficiently fulfill their MPF obligations and manage their MPF via one-stop electronic tools and services like online portals, mobile apps, e-enrollment, e-statements, chatbots, retirement planning and investment tools, and more. The MPF system is undergoing a digital transformation to deliver simpler, user-centric and readily accessible services, and the eMPF platform is driving these changes by standardizing, streamlining and automating MPF scheme administration. Sustainable investing is another tenet of change, gathering momentum among MPF schemes with more attention paid to environmental, social and governance investing principles. As the MPF system continues to evolve, more people will come to see MPF as an indispensable pillar of retirement protection they can depend on, and we will continue to create long-term and sustainable value for our members and for Hong Kong.
In this part of the symposium, we will be focusing on another important subject, sustainable investing. When we talk about sustainable, three letters always come up as ESG. They represent environmental, social, and governance. On top of financial performance, more and more investors consider ESG factors when they make investment decisions. So what are the key issues under ESG, and also how do we incorporate ESG factors in developing a sustainable investing policy? Today, we are happy to have Mr. James Robertson, Head of Asia, ex-China and Japan of the PRI Association. He will share with us some global insights and practices for investing responsibly through integration of ESG issues into investment analysis and decision-making process. Let's welcome Mr. Robertson.
Esteemed guests, good afternoon. I would first, of course, like to thank MPFA for inviting me for this opportunity to present to you. My name is James Robertson, and over the next 15 minutes, I will look to cover three areas. Firstly, to introduce the PRI and responsible investment. Secondly, to talk through the importance in developing a structured approach to responsible investment. And finally, to highlight some key ESG themes for the future. And just to note before I begin that for this presentation, please see responsible investment and sustainable investment as being the same. I will use them interchangeably. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the UN-supported Principles for Responsible Investment, or PRI, we are an investor-led global nonprofit with the goal to understand the investment implications of ESG issues and support our members or signatories in incorporating these into investment and ownership decisions. The foundations of the organization were laid back in 2005 when the UN Secretary General brought together an international group of institutional investors to create the principles themselves. And at the core of the organization's mission is the belief that a more economically efficient, sustainable global financial system is a necessity not only for long-term value creation, but that such a system will reward long-term responsible investors and also benefit the environment and society as a whole. Our signatories, which includes asset owners, investment managers, and service providers, join as a way to demonstrate leadership and a commitment to responsible investment, to learn from best practices as they look to develop and implement a systematic approach, and contribute and collaborate as part of a global network of peers. In Hong Kong, HKMA is our largest and most influential signatory, but many of the asset managers that are appointed by MPF trustees are themselves PRI signatories. All of our members commit to implementing 6 aspirational principles. These assert the importance of incorporating ESG issues into investment analysis and decision-making, as well as into your ownership or stewardship practices. They also call on our signatories to actively promote the acceptance and implementation of these principles within the investment industry. And they commit to an annual reporting process on their progress and processes that they have in place to achieve these. The growth of the PRI is often used as a proxy for the mainstreaming of responsible investment. And what is undeniable is the interest in and application of these principles has been picking up pace. From an initial group of 100 investors back in 2006 that founded the PRI, we have since grown to a membership of over 4,000 signatories, managing a combined total AUM of well over 100 trillion in AUM US dollars. In Asia, implementation has lagged behind other regions, but interest has been picking up pace very quickly, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years. And you can benefit from well-established practices which have been developed in other markets. Now, to help understand this mainstreaming of responsible investment and sustainability more broadly, it is important to consider the drivers involved. Firstly, materiality. A growing recognition in the finance industry and within academia that ESG factors can influence investor returns. Indeed, because of this materiality, we believe that considering ESG issues is part and parcel of fulfilling your fiduciary duty. Not only are investors permitted or allowed to do this, it is an absolute must. Legal analysis from a number of law firms, as well as the regulation, the clarification provided by regulators in multiple jurisdictions, have confirmed and emphasized this. Secondly, market demand. This is coming from asset owners and their beneficiaries in particular, who are increasingly calling for greater transparency about how and where their money is invested. It's driven by a growing awareness that ESG factors can influence company value, returns and reputation, and an increased focus on the environmental and social impacts of the companies that they are invested in. Research has shown that when it comes to pension schemes in particular, the more informed the individuals are, the stronger their preferences and demand for sustainable or responsible investment products and choices. The last of these drivers is regulation, and we have seen a substantial uptake in this since 2005, but particularly since the financial crisis. This ranges from the implementation of stewardship codes, corporate sustainability disclosure, investor disclosure, as well as national sustainable finance strategies, which help to bring together a more structured and cohesive approach to sustainable and green finance, such as we've seen in Hong Kong, developed by the Cross-Agency Steering Group. Now, sustainable or responsible investment has become a key consideration across the investment chain, from beneficiaries to investors, trustees, and with regulators increasingly playing a role. Of course, just today, the MPFA has issued a circular providing a set of guiding principles for adopting sustainable investing, and I look forward to hearing more about these in later presentations. And when we talk about the mainstreaming of ESG issues by investors, it's primarily with regard to the development of a more formalized and structured approach to responsible investing, which can facilitate a more effective analysis of material ESG issues, enabling the identification of risks and the capturing of the opportunities associated with these. There are key steps that investors should consider working through to establish such a structured approach. These begin with considering fiduciary obligations and determining beneficiary preferences, moving on to a definition of investment principles, which in turn informs the formulation of an investment strategy. The final step is to codify this strategy through an investment policy underpinned by sound governance. Healthy debate and the inclusion of diverse views should be encouraged throughout this process. For example, in setting up an internal working group to lead this exercise, while many others may choose to draw on investment consultants and their expertise to support this process. An RI policy plays a critical role in outlining an organization's expectations and aspirations to both internal and external stakeholders. For yourselves as trustees, this document can provide a focal point for interactions with investment managers. It may focus on your process for incorporating ESG issues into manager selection, appointment, and monitoring. and the expectations you may have of external managers with regards to their own RI practices, including both ESG incorporation and active ownership, and how they report back on these to you. It is important that the policy itself is periodically reviewed to ensure its effectiveness and alignment with your investment beliefs going forward. ESG considerations themselves should be central to the relationship between asset owners or trustees and investment managers, and can be addressed at every step depicted. It's critical that asset owners identify a clear strategy up front and implement a considered approach to manager selection which reflects the type of organization you are or aspire to be. With careful due diligence, the asset owner can ensure an appointed manager shares a similar approach, not simply saying that they do. And in then embedding ESG requirements within legal documentation as part of manager appointment and agreeing the content and frequency of reporting, this can support effective manager monitoring. The PRI has produced guidance for each of these steps as part of its program to help asset owners. I encourage you to check these out using the link provided on this slide. And in assessing a manager's investment approach, you may wish to consider a range of aspects going from internal culture, investment approach and objectives, policy documents, RI practices across asset classes, and the underlying governance of their approach. As mentioned earlier, to ensure accountability and transparency for PRI signatories, they commit to an annual reporting exercise on their processes, the outputs of which include a public transparency report detailing their approach at an organizational level and asset class specific processes, and a private assessment report scoring them against an established methodology, based on the strength of the processes in place. These documents, the first of which is made public, and the second of which may be requested directly from the signatory, can prove highly informative when reviewing and comparing a manager's approach and how this developed over time. Now, I would like to finish by looking forward. Many of you may be familiar with the World Economic Forum, who publish an annual global risks report. What we have seen in recent years is that environmental issues as well as social issues have been consistently pinpointed among the biggest risks that organizations face, both in terms of the likelihood of them occurring and the impact they will have on investment and company performance when they do. Critically, many of these risks are also interconnected. For example, ongoing climate action failure and the impact of human-induced global warming has triggered extreme weather events, far more frequent and intense than previously modeled. And these can exacerbate water crises and have an impact on food scarcity. Recognition of these risks by a multitude of stakeholders and the need to have sufficient data to understand these risks and how they are being addressed has led to initiatives like the TCFD, which provides a framework to drive the management and disclosure of climate-related risks. And we'll be hearing shortly from SFC representatives on how they are approaching this area. A similar task force is already in development with a focus on nature and biodiversity, the TNFD. And these areas represent not only crucial systemic risks that investors need to understand, but also themes that clients and beneficiaries are increasingly interested in, looking for products and pension choices which allow a focus on companies that are aligned to the transition to a low-carbon future, or working to address biodiversity loss, or seeking to provide solutions that help contribute to meeting one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals. With the increased visibility and recognition of the urgency in addressing these risks, the expectations on investors and the role of the wider financial system, the role that they can play, are changing. The pandemic has triggered a wider reflection on societal values and purpose, and served as a harsh reminder that ignoring risks and failing to plan and act decisively on mitigation can carry enormous human and economic costs. As pension fund trustees and stewards of capital being invested over the long term, there is an obligation to assess the asset managers you appoint and monitor their capabilities and approach to responsible investment, but also an opportunity here to better serve and provide both the transparency and options for Hong Kong savers with regards to sustainable and responsible investment. I will stop there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, and please remain on stage. Now we move to the Q&A section. We open to the floor. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and our staff will pass you the microphone. For those online attendees, just please type your questions in the chat box and on the screen. So, any questions from the floor? Don't miss the chance to ask our expertise. Any questions from the floor? I think maybe you still need some time to think about it. Meanwhile, I received some questions online already. And then the question is, we note that many MPF investor managers are PRI signatories. Could MPF trustees be PRI signatories as well? What are the benefits of being a PRI signatory?
Yes, absolutely. So MPF trustees absolutely could become a signatory to the PRI. The benefits do range depending on the members who join. Of course, it is a way to demonstrate leadership and commitment. Joining a global network of peers that you can engage and learn from, and having access to a range of guidance, best practices, and case studies to understand how this is being done in practice. And there are also access to the reporting and assessment outputs and additional insights so that you can better understand how this is being implemented both by other trustees, but also by the asset managers as well. If anyone is more interested in this area, I would encourage you just to find me afterwards or to reach out to me directly. I will say that a lot of the resources that are available, we make publicly available. And so please do visit our website because there's a huge amount of guidance there that you can take advantage of as you start on this journey.
So any questions from the floor? I guess you want to ask him privately, so grab him after the discussion. Once again, big hands to Mr. Robertson. Thank you so much for insightful sharing. Thank you very much. As Mr. Robertson just pointed out that environmental risks are increasingly material in terms of impact and likelihood, the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission also acknowledged the importance of the environmental risk, in particular the climate-related risk. In August this year, SFC issued its consultation conclusions on the management and disclosure of climate-related risk by fund managers. We are very honored to have Ms. Linda Yu, Director of the Intermediaries Supervision Department of the Securities and Futures Commission, to share with us the latest regulatory developments on this. Ms. Yu, please.
Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here today and to have the opportunity to share with you the work of the SFC in relation to the sustainable finance, especially the management and disclosure of climate-related risks by fund managers. So when we have been dealing with the pandemic for nearly 2 years, as Cynthia has mentioned just now, the COVID has helped to boost the percentage of digitalization rate, but the pace of climate change has not been slowed down under the global pandemic. According to the latest report of IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is widespread, fast, rapid, and intensifying. So many climate change risks and accelerating transition to net zero emissions is at the top of the regulatory agenda globally. So many jurisdictions have enhanced or are enhancing climate or ESG disclosures. And international organizations or regulatory authorities are gaining momentum to develop the standards. Just to give you a few examples here,
Say the first one, the NGFS, which is the Network for Greening the Financial System, created by a network of central banks and financial supervisors. It encourages all the companies issuing public debt or equity, as well as the financial sector institutions disclose in line with the TCFD recommendations. And it also encourages the policymakers and supervisors to consider further actions to foster a broader adoption of the TCFD recommendations. In Europe, the EU released its Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, which took effect in March 2021. And the UK government has also published its roadmap, outlining its proposals to introduce company reporting against the TCFD recommendations as part of its green finance strategy. And this year, the FCA has consulted on its proposals to require its authorized asset managers and other financial institutions to publish client-focused, TCFD-aligned disclosures. And it has also published a discussion paper recently on sustainability disclosure requirements and investment labels. In Singapore, you will find that the FAS have published its guidelines on environmental risk management for asset managers. In New Zealand, the government has also passed a bill to make climate-related disclosures mandatory for some organizations that meet certain thresholds. And the reporting standards will also be in line with the TCFD recommendations. And recently, the IOSCO, that's the International Organization of Securities Commission, issued a report on regulators' requirements of asset managers to cover the integration of climate risk into managers' investment process and overall risk assessments. So, with the growing regulatory requirements, growing physical risk, and rising investors' concern, climate change could not be ignored by the asset managers. Back to Hong Kong. Hong Kong, being a part of China, has a role to fulfill the obligations that China has under the Paris Agreement. And given the large footprint and international significance of Hong Kong's financial market, the SFC has been monitoring policy developments in green finance since 2018. So in April 2019, the SFC issued a circular on green or ESG funds that aims to enhance the disclosure comparability between different types of SFC authorized green or ESG funds and their transparency. And this circular was replaced by another one in June 2021 with enhanced requirements for disclosures, as well as annual assessments of ESG funds, especially those with a climate-related focus. And then in 2019, the SFC engaged an external consultant to conduct a survey of asset managers and asset owners with focus on their sustainable practices. And the results indicated that only a limited number of asset managers had the processes in place to manage the potential risks associated with climate change. So this fell short of the expectations of the asset owners and the international developments. So in March 2020, the SFC formed a climate change technical expert group. So this comprises of the industry participants, the data service providers, and also some standard setting bodies, and so as to gather the industry knowledge and experience to assist us in drafting the proposed requirements relating to the climate-related risk. And in October last year, we published a consultation paper, and this year we concluded our consultation conclusions. So just a brief overcap of our requirements. The SFC focused on climate change at the initial stage, as we find that this is climate change because it's a source of financial risk that falls within the mandate of the regulators, and is also urgent and important. And we also find that commencing with climate change actually will make the implementation process more manageable because the matrix or data in this aspect are more developed in the moment. So we have issued some amendments to our Fund Manager Code of Conduct, which is the FMCC, and a circular setting out our expected standards for fund managers to take climate-related risks into consideration during their investment and risk management process, and to make appropriate disclosures.
And to foster the development of a more consistent standard and to reduce the compliance burden of the asset managers, we have made reference to the TCFD recommendations when developing our standards. We have also adopted a phased and proportional approach in developing the standards. And you will find that we start with fund managers that manage the collective investment schemes in the initial stage. And then we apply the baseline requirements to all fund managers, but the enhanced standards for large fund managers, i.e. those with AUM of 8 billion and above. And we also allow the smaller fund managers a longer transitional period to comply with the baseline requirements. So we have issued a set of FAQs to provide guidance to the industry and also a list of practical examples to the managers for reference. So we hope that all these new requirements will help to increase the awareness of the impact of carbon emissions and the associated risks, and to provide quality and comparable information to investors and to help combat greenwashing. And that's the framework of our requirements. You'll find that it's covered 4 key elements, namely governance, investment management, risk management, and disclosure. So for fund managers that have the investment discretion, they are expected to comply with these requirements. For governance, we consider that the board and senior management support is crucial. The board has to set the tone from the top, and then the senior management to supervise and monitor the processes. For investment management, the fund managers are required to identify the relevant and material climate-related risks, and then factor this risk into their investment construction process. And for risk management, the fund managers have to identify, assess, manage, and then monitor this relevant and material climate risk in their risk management process. All fund managers are required to apply appropriate tools and metrics to assess and qualify these related risks. For large fund managers, they also need to assess the relevance and utility of the scenario analysis. And they need to take reasonable steps to report the portfolio carbon footprints of Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions associated with the fund's underlying investment at the fund management level. That means for the larger fund managers, they are not only required to make the qualitative disclosure, but also need to make some quantitative disclosures. So for the large fund managers, they are also required to describe their engagement policies and the carbon footprints, as I mentioned just now. So for this timeline, you see that we have adopted a staggered transition period with the 12 months and 15 months transition period. This means the large fund managers, they will have 12 months to comply with the baseline requirements, and they have to comply with that by August 2022, and then the enhanced requirements by November 2022. And for other in-scope fund managers, they will need to comply with the baseline requirements by November 2022. And these are some of the latest developments of the SF regulatory requirements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yu, and please remain on stage. Now we move to a short Q&A section for online attendees. Please type your questions on the Q&A chat box. And for those, we already have a questions from the floor. The lady in the second row, can you please pass the microphone to her? Yes, it's coming.
Hi, Linda. I understand that the new SFC ESG requirements actually affect both private fund managers as well as public fund managers. So the implications are quite so wide-reaching, and there are quite a lot of terminologies, requirements, how to calculate indicators, how to calculate whatever carbon emission level, and all of this. So will the SFC organize training, detailed training sessions to responsible officers of Type 9 licensed corporations, to compliance officers, or even documentation lawyers. And also, so say, for example, set up a hotline for licensed corporations to ask questions so that so the implementation of the requirements will be more sort of streamlined and everybody can meet the deadline.
Thanks for your question, YY. I think that's a good question because climate change is a new concept to the industry. We have tried to facilitate the industry to comply with these requirements. As I mentioned just now, we don't just issued our amendments to the Fund Manager Code of Conduct. We set a detailed set of our expected standards in our circular. We give guidance in some form of FAQs to help you industry implement these requirements. And we have also worked out a long list of practical examples to illustrate how to comply with these standards. And I would thank James for your inputs as well in helping us to prepare all those materials. That's kind of reference materials, and actually it's helped illustrate how to do different kinds of calculations or set out expected standards of when you say you have to disclose the governance standards, what are we expecting, or the investment risk management methodologies, what are the different types of methodologies. It's produced sort of some reference material for help the industry to have a better idea of what's climate change and how to approach this. And actually, recently, we have run our own Facebook Live training sections. And you will be able to find that video from our webpage. It's put on the webpage, one in Cantonese and then one in English. But I think you have already pointed out, still the industry may ask for more and more training or guidance on how to implement these requirements. Apart from this, I think the next step is that we will try to explore with the industry associations or some Securities Institute or other training centers and see how or whether more training or education in this aspect could be provided to see and then to help the fund managers implement those requirements. So I'm glad that you bring this up. That means you help, or the industry has already started to think about this and to get prepared to learn about this concept and to get prepared for the implementation. Thanks.
So any more questions from the floor? If you have any questions, just raise your hand. If no, one at the back.
Hi. Hi, Linda. Thanks for the presentation. I'm Echo with Digitalization. I'm a reporter. And I actually wonder, I know that SFC is going to roll out enhanced disclosure for ESG funds next year, I believe in early January. So I wonder if that's also related to this climate change related disclosure, or is that something else? And are those enhanced disclosure will only be applied to retail funds on SFC's ESG list? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. I think what I'm trying to say or cover in this aspect is that the fund manager code of conduct requirements actually is applied to all fund managers, irrespective of whether it's authorized fund managers or not. And there are another set of circulars relating to the disclosure of SFC authorized funds, which covers those funds that's authorized by us, but is named as green funds or ESG funds. So you may have to have a look of different sets of requirements because one applies to all fund managers, one is applying to the SFC authorized funds. So when you are mentioning about the ESG funds, probably I guess you are referring to that authorized SFC authorized fund circular. It's those that apply to the funds that we authorize. So you just read them. You've got to read them in parallel if you are managing SFC authorized funds. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yu. Thank you so much for sharing. Once again, big hands to Ms. Yu. Thank you so much, and please be seated. Thank you very much. While we see the key of sustainable investing as long-term benefits This echoes well with the planning of retirement investment, such as the MPF. Next, Mr. Leo Zhu, Chief Operating Officer and Executive Director of the MPFA, will talk about the development of sustainable investing for MPF funds. Mr. Zhu, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Lady, distinguished guests, and friends from the industry. It is my pleasure to be here at the symposium today. Today, I will talk about a few topics, being the ESG relevancy to MPF, what we have done in the past, and of course, I will talk a little bit about the guidance principle released earlier today. Now, we heard a lot recently about the transition to a sustainable economy and the term ESG. But how is it related to MPF? In short, ESG issues can have a material effect on the company's financial business operations and performance over the longer term. As such, the sustainability of MPF investments depends on whether ESG risks are properly managed. In particular, the investment horizon for MPF funds stretches over decades, making them vulnerable to long-term investment risk. If the investment and risk management processes of MPF funds have yet to take into account these systemic risks, the value of MPF investment may be seriously affected. Now, as you may be aware, China has pledged to become carbon neutral before 2060, and Hong Kong will do so by 2050. Indeed, addressing climate change has now become a top priority for government officials and regulatory agencies around the world. Linda has just walked us through the latest developments set out by the SFC. Now, these changes in government policies worldwide may affect how businesses are operated and may also pose systemic risk to the economies and financial system worldwide. In response to this impact, there is a need to formulate a policy to drive the development of sustainable investing practices for MPF funds. Now, the policy aims to ensure that the MPF scheme members' interests are protected, and it should be aligned with that of other financial regulators in Hong Kong and global regulatory development. We acknowledge that the concept of sustainable investing is still in the early stage of development in the pension sector worldwide. The MPFA, being the primary regulator of the MPF industry, put our focus on 3 areas. Back in 2018, in order to promote the higher awareness and broader adoption of ESG factors for the MPF system, we issued a circular letter to the MPF trustees, which asked them and their investment managers to consider incorporating ESG factors into their decision-making processes and disclosing their approach to MPF scheme members. In March this year, the MPFA formed a working group together with the MPF trustees to discuss their roles in ESG integration and disclosure and the proposed implementation approach. Now, after seeking their comments, we developed a high-level guiding principle to assist trustees in establishing relevant governance framework to manage the ESG risk and make relevant disclosure. The principle was just issued earlier this morning, and I will explain later in my presentation. At the same time, the MPFA have made continuous effort in working with the MPF trustees in capacity building and training of MPF trustees. We have also invited industry experts to provide a series of briefing sessions covering different aspects of sustainable investing from August this year, and we will continue to do so next year. On another front, the MPFA also collaborates with other financial regulators to ensure alignment of policy formulation. Back in October 2019, the International Organization of Pension Supervisors, or what we call IOPS, have issued a set of ESG guidelines. Pension supervisors, including MPFA, are encouraged to follow the IOPS guidelines in providing guidance to pension governing. The guiding principle I just mentioned were developed by making reference to these IOPS guidelines as well. We also work together with other financial regulators in Hong Kong. The MPFA joined the Green and Sustainable Finance Cross-Agency Steering Group, established by HKMA and the SFC in May 2020. While we set our expectation on the management of ESG risk on MPF trustees, I think as mentioned by Linda just now, the SFC also amended the FMCC in August this year to make climate-related risk into consideration in their investment and risk management processes and make appropriate disclosure. Third, we believe that raising public awareness should go hand in hand with the adoption of sustainable investing by MPF trustees. As such, we would partner with MPF trustees to raise public awareness in sustainable investing. Now let's go back to the principles. We recognize that different international standards on the management of the ESG risk are evolving rapidly. Therefore, it is considered that a non-prescriptive, principle-based approach is more appropriate. Our guiding principles lay down a high-level framework that serve to assist MPF trustees to integrate ESG factors into the investment and risk management processes of MPF funds to make relevant disclosure to the MPF scheme members. Now, there are 7 principles in total, covering 4 major areas: the governance, strategy, risk management, and disclosure. Governance. Not only that MPF trustees should be mindful of the ESG as a material financial risk factor with the long-term financial impact, the board of directors should play an oversight role and require their senior executives to regularly report to the board on the progress of it. Strategy. MPF trustees are required to set out the ESG integration strategy at the scheme level and describe how it can be implemented in view of different investment structure. For example, the fund-on-fund structure investing into APIF or ITCIS. Risk management. The MPF trustees should consider ESG factors with no prejudice for the objective of obtaining an appropriate risk-return profile on purely financial ground. And lastly, on disclosure. MPF trustees should disclose and report to MPF scheme integration strategy on a regular basis and describe how ESG factors are factored into the relevant investment strategies. We want to emphasize that sustainable investing is the strategy to drive from the top management. Now, as a first step, MPF trustees should start to work on their action plan and submit to us by Feb next year. Now, the principle I just talked about lay out the necessary elements to be covered in the plan. And MPF trustees' board of directors is responsible to formulate an integration strategy to require the consideration of material ESG factors in the investment and risk management processes of all MPF funds. By no means we require them to transform all MPF funds into ESG theme funds. Nevertheless, relevant and material ESG factors have to be considered, and MPF trustees may rely on their investment managers to determine the relevance and materiality of ESG factors. Now, given that the investment part is handled by the investment managers, the ESG factors are indeed, the assessment part is indeed embedded into the risk and risk management and investment processes of investment managers. So the MPF trustees should set their expectations and communicate to their investment managers. Lastly, and perhaps the most important task is to let MPF scheme members know about it. This is how MPF trustees demonstrate to their members about their commitment to put in place a good investment governance framework covering ESG risk to protect scheme members' interest. While the reporting can be made via various channels, we require MPF trustees to make relevant disclosure in MPF schemes' annual reports for financial year-end date on or after November 30th of 2022 as a matter of good governance. With that, thank you very much, and I wish you all a very fruitful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chu. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wow, today we have such an informative and insightful day. Once again, thanks to our speakers for sharing their insights on the topics about digital transformation and sustainable investing. To wrap up today's symposium, may I call upon Mr. Cheng Yan-chee, Acting Managing Director of the MPFA, to give the closing remarks. Mr. Cheng, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the MPFA, I would like to thank all of you for taking part in this symposium. And I would also like to extend my sincere appreciation to all our distinguished speakers for sharing your knowledge and invaluable experiences with us this afternoon. It has been an extremely productive event. One message from this symposium is especially clear. And that is, digital transformation is no longer an option, but a must. And it is our joint responsibility to make sure that we fully embrace digital transformation and technologies and the opportunities they offered. With the eMPF platform, the MPF system will be better prepared to transform itself for the benefit of employers and scheme members. The platform's success relies not only on hardware, software, and the financial technologies and applications it used, but it relies also on the backing of everyone, including employers, scheme members, and people in the industry like you. The development of the eMPF platform is one of the initiatives in the Smart City Blueprint for Hong Kong 2.0, released by the government last year. We at the MPFA are fully committed to creating a new digital MPF ecosystem as part of this initiative, which is designed to bring the benefits of digital technology to the people of Hong Kong. Another important takeaway from this symposium is the need for sustainable investing. And this is particularly true when it comes to mitigating climate change. And even if it is left unchecked, I believe it would be even more catastrophic than the impact on our way of life by the COVID-19. Indeed, climate risk has the potential to destabilize the social, financial, and economic conditions on which we depend for the MPF system. We do not underestimate the challenges faced by trustees and understand that many of us are still at the starting line. So the principles the MPFA published today would provide a critical framework for taking action. And to provide further support, we have developed a capacity building plan to enhance trustees' knowledge of sustainable investing. We will also work with trustees to raise public awareness
on how sustainable investing affect MPF investments. As this symposium comes to a close, I hope that you all have had a very enjoyable and insightful learning experience, and that today's event had inspired your respective transition journey. We look forward to working with many of you in the years ahead and having you join us in our efforts to continue improving the MPF system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cheng. Please be seated. The MPF Symposium 2021, The Road Ahead, Digital Transformation and Sustainable Investing has come to an end. On behalf of the MPFA, we would like to thank you again for your participation. We hope you find today's program is inspiring, informative, and insightful. The presentation materials and video highlights will be available on the MPFA website later on. Have a good day. Thank you very much.